Okay, hi Roger. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Vonvo.com, and to come and speak about both the Israeli and
My pleasure, Max.
thank you, thank you for coming to speak about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Um, just to start off today's conversation, if anyone else joins the room, just as some ground rules, let's keep it obviously respectful. Um, but right now there's no one in the room, so we can just get going. What I was going to say first is, would you mind giving the viewers and anyone watching this video a quick background of yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. I'm fairly new to this I/P debate. I was brought up as for want of a better term, a Zionist Christian from my 20s up to my 50s. I suppose I was a Zionist Christian, but then I woke up and I started realising that there's a lot of propaganda that I got fed, and I took it hook, line, and sinker. And since then, I've realised and learnt enormous amounts. I've corrected my views, and I just like to see truth be established, truth be known. I like to see the propaganda to be exposed. And I have a particular view on things. Not many people share my view, but I haven't been a student of anyone. I haven't been to any particular teaching institute that's given me the line I take. It's all self-educated by friends and church leaders I appreciate and have an affection for, and that's about it.
Okay, great. Now, would you
live in Australia? I was anyway.
Great. So what I was going to say next, what I was going to ask next is, what exactly was there anything specific, or what exactly got you involved in this conflict? Would you mind just giving us an intro into how you got involved in it?
Yeah, it was waking up, changing views.
Okay, very good. So as I said just before, as I shared just before, I want to try and keep the conversations this week a little more focused and tied to actual specific topics. So the first question that I want to ask, and it's tying into the idea of, is Israel an apartheid state, is what's your overall analysis on Israel and the allegations that it is an apartheid state?
Sorry, I just got interrupted then. Can you just repeat that, mate?
Yeah, of course. What exactly makes you conclude, that the allegations are true that Israel is an apartheid state?
Oh, okay. Well, firstly, you have to divide up the 67 border. Definitely in the West Bank since the 67 war, after, was it well, let's say 10th of June. I think it was from 4th of June to 9th of June or something, wasn't it? But anyway, post 67 in the West Bank, the occupied territories has been nothing but 100% apartheid, where there's a rule for the Israelis and there's a rule for the Palestinians. There's a military court that deals with all the issues, Palestinian issues, and there's a civilian court, but the Palestinians all come under the military court, and the civil courts that Israel have for themselves don't apply. There's also the aspect of even Israel proper and behind the green lines. When you look at the right of return for Israelis only anywhere in the world, that's nothing but 100% apartheid. There's also lesser apartheids in Israel proper, where there is law that involves both of the Arab and the Israelis. There's discrimination on those laws, and Arab can't buy property wherever he wants, and there's many other biases that go against the Arabs being free citizens.
Of course. So specifically, the first item that I wanted to talk about, and obviously I'll ask some questions back and forth, supporting and then going against whether or not this statement is true. But what exactly do you hear and know about and read about relating to the checkpoints, which are placed within the borders of Israel, within the West Bank and Gaza?
Well, they hold up the free flow of Palestinians in their everyday lives, so they can go shopping. They might have to go through a checkpoint. They might be held up for 6 hours. They can be discriminated. They may not even be allowed past the checkpoints. The checkpoints interfere with their lives constantly. So my screen just went blank. So they just another aspect of apartheid. Those checkpoints, and essentially they evil.
Right now,
they destroy their lives.
Right now, what I was just going to quickly ask. As 1 second. Okay. 1 second. Okay, what I was just going to quickly ask is, so in terms of in terms of having these checkpoints to prevent against any weapons getting into the hands of the wrong individuals and potentially what Israel calls terrorists. Do you agree that that is, a justified reason to have those checkpoints when they're doing it for those reasons?
Well, I suppose it has reduced incidences of terrorism and deaths on the Israeli inside Israel, but they seem to go way past. They seem to go way past that. They seem to be used as a punishment. I mean, they could run those checkpoints efficiently, and they could simply look for weapons only without insulting the population, without making their lives misery. So, it could be fair enough, but that doesn't seem to be the reason. The reasons for the checkpoints go way beyond that. They're there to insult the Palestinians, it seems to me. And if they upset them enough, they hope the Palestinians will leave, and the population of Palestinians will be reduced in the area, and there'll be less resistance for the Israelis just to take full control.
Right now, so ultimately, the idea of potential of reducing any sort of extremist acts, you would be in favor of that if these sort of checkpoints were, designed to be a lot more efficient than they currently are. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So ultimately, the idea behind, Israel in that sense relating to the checkpoints, having the right to defend itself, that part makes sense. But, incorrectly and disturbing people's normal lives that's just not the proper use of these checkpoints, and there's too many cases of this sort of thing going on.
Correct. Of course, the solution will never be checkpoints overall. The solution would be true full citizenship and full freedom and rights of the Palestinians to be removed. So, full democracy, full rights, a one-state solution, and there'd be no need for checkpoints. There'd be no need for security if the populations were mixed. They wouldn't be able to very easily target just one ethnicity.
So
and there'd be no need to.
Right, and
the anger would be gone for that to happen.
So my question that I wanted to ask you, and I didn't really cover it so much yesterday. Last weekend. Sorry. But the idea that full rights and full citizenship, that sort of idea would only apply if there was an overall one state, one country solution. In terms of the current status, like for example, when the PLO was just granted this statehood in the UN. I mean, is it possible that some of the contributions are that they're not getting full citizenship and full rights underneath their own authority? Is it direct blame on Israel, although like it's an occupation? Is there blame to be assigned to Palestine for their not having full citizenship and full rights?
Well, Palestine doesn't have the freedom to run itself. That's a hypothetical question because that hasn't had a chance to be proven. Palestine has been under the thumb. They haven't been free. So it's a question that's relevant, really.
Right. Okay. So next thing that I wanted to bring up relating to this whole apartheid idea, when it comes to the wall that's being built throughout the borders, ultimately, what sort of like the way I'm looking at it is it seems like there's some sort of abstract message that Israel is conveying by building that wall. What do you think that message is?
Well, firstly, the wall doesn't follow the borders. The green line, the 1949 armistice line, if it followed that border, it would be a security wall. At the moment, some places it penetrates into the West Bank, maybe 50 miles, even more. I wouldn't know, not 50 miles, many miles. Penetrates almost halfway to the, in some places, almost halfway to the River Jordan River. So it splits communities, Arab, Palestinian communities. It splits their farmlands. The wall is nothing but a chance for Israel to increase its land grab and increase the settlements, the areas for the settlements. So it's it's not a security wall as at the moment. That's a joke.
And now in places where, in places where, for example, between both the wall being built and checkpoints, I mean, ultimately, those two items, would you say that those are the two most critical items that need to be, completely, halted, in order for, is that one of the demands of Palestinian authorities to, require peace or to have any sort of solution going forward? And what other items are there if it's not just those two?
I've just got my wife. I've just woken my wife up. She's not very happy, mate. Hang on.
Do you want to? Is it?
Can I just give you Just give me 2 minutes time out. Is that all right? I'll just talk to my wife for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just give me 2 minutes time out.
Time out.
Yeah, 2 a.m. in the morning's not a good time, but anyway.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
No problem. We're really happy and thankful that you decided to come on. Okay, so my last question was just referring to the idea behind checkpoints and the wall. Are those the two items that need to be stopped completely in order for there to be any sort of solution going forward? And is it possibly too late to halt either of those two items?
No, it's never too late. I think it's way more than the two items. It's an attitude that's the problem, and the attitude of rights. Whereas many of the Israeli population believe they have a right to the West Bank, and some even believe they have a right to the other side of the East Bank as well, parts of Jordan. So it comes down to attitudes, the cultural traditions that of 2,500 years ago. Some Jews believe that gives them enough right to do what they're doing. Of course, they just got a tradition of culture. Well, you could say the Vikings have a tradition of culture. You could say that the Mongolians have a tradition of culture. Anyone's got a tradition of culture. The Mongols almost controlled from the Pacific to the Atlantic at one point. Does that mean they have a right to do that again because culturally they've done it? I mean, the culture argument is weak as water.
Well, so
anybody can come up with cultural arguments. The Catholics and the Protestants in England used to kill each other. You could say that the Protestants go back to their cultural argument of doing that again. I mean, these cultural arguments are just a nonsense. They will get nowhere. But so the issues are deep,
right?
And
so
a lot of the issues have enablers, like the America and is an enabler for Israel to do what it's doing. So the issues go across the world. It's not just a local issue. The factors behind the issues.
So can I ask you a follow-up question on the?
Absolutely huge.
Can I ask you a follow-up question on the culture concept? Okay. Last weekend for the first time, I began learning about this idea of the right to return, and I'm getting the from hearing and listening to that, I got I'm definitely making the connection that this idea of the right to return, relates directly to cultural history and cultural background. So my question to you would be: is that if you're saying that the cultural argument is, honestly just very weak because everyone can say that they can have a culture and a history, ultimately, is that a justified reason to, for is that a valuable enough reason or important enough reason for Palestinians to be able to return to this land?
Well, the cultural argument for Palestinians is very recent. They were living in the land until 48, very peaceably, very happily, and they've been doing it for a long time. So if you've got a recent culture and it only disintegrated because of the power of the gun, it by far exceeds any cultural argument that's 2,000 years old. So, yeah, a cultural argument is definitely an argument. The Palestinians have the stronger cultural argument.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess just the issue that I'm running into, and just tell me if you can kind of hear where I'm coming from, is that like I hear both sides talking about the idea behind culture and history, and I get the sense that in order for anything to move forward, it's almost like those items need to be you know put past them, and they kind of need to be. I know it's difficult to just forget about them, but each side is claiming that they have a history and a culture, and each side has even said to me that they've lived in peace in years past before 1948. And so I just get the sense that, and tell me if you agree, that the idea behind culture and history needs to be really somewhat put in the past.
Revisited.
You think revisited or put in the past and left in the past to not be looked at again?
Well, no, it's the Palestinian culture doesn't need to be put in the past. The Israeli culture needs to be put in the past. I'll give you a one-sided answer to that.
Was there anything on top of that, or was that I don't know if you cut out for a second or not. I mean, just because I guess the only question would be is like if
no, you can't put real lives totally in the past. Their livelihood was on the land. They got kicked out, and the refugees, and they've suffered. The suffering has come primarily because their culture was demolished. Their lives were demolished. Their livelihood was demolished. Their memories are just horrendous. And you forget that. You can't negate that. You can't wipe the slate and start again. There's got to be justice. There's got to be sympathy to what's happened to them. There's got to be an understanding of the pain they've gone through. So you can't start again. You can revisit it, and you can say that, okay, we will try and acknowledge the deep emotional love the Israelis have for their land. But that doesn't mean to say they can reign and rule that land. They can still love land. They can still love their memories, their culture. They can still be equal citizens. So I don't know what you're really fishing for, but
no, and so
cultural aspects cannot be forgotten.
And so, I mean, that's the second time that you've mentioned the idea of citizenship. So, do you think that, I mean, if we want to just move into the idea behind solutions quickly, do you get the impression that it really is going to come down to, just because you mentioned citizenship again, is that potentially one of the most critical aspects to any sort of solution? That's what most Palestinians, you believe, are feeling deprived of, and that really stems from a lot of different things?
I think you're right. If they had citizenship with the same rights, the same freedoms as the Israelis, most of the angst would go overnight. If they've got equal opportunity, if they aren't racially prejudiced, They lived normal lives as everyone else, had the same expectations of them, have the same abilities to achieve. So if there's total equality, most of the issues will go overnight.
So my next question that I would ask you is, on the news you hear it get reported, that, and from speaking to different Israelis, they say that they, provide these territories and the Palestinian people with water, with food, with electricity, with medicine when necessary. They don't say that they are depriving them of those vital resources. What do you say to those Israelis that claim that?
Well, that's not equality, is it? If you're judging your righteousness by saying we don't deprive you of water or transport or the basics of life, that's not equality. That's just a joke. But the fact is, they do deprive them of water. They do deprive them of everything anyway. So, the only thing they don't deprive them of is fresh air, I suppose, and sunlight. They deprive them of nearly everything else.
Okay, so
that's an argument they will come up with, but it's a weak argument.
Do you think that there is? Do you think ultimately an issue that's coming into play more and more frequently is just like, is it possible that Israel is finding a struggle of what exactly? Because, I mean, if you can educate me on this, that'd be great. But like, I guess I get the question that comes up in my head is it possible that Israel is struggling to figure out what it is that they want to do with these lands and these people, because it's just like, I guess I'm struggling to figure out exactly what my question is. It's just I'm finding it difficult to understand just exactly what those, the West Bank.
No, well, I think I know what you're saying.
What do you think I'm saying? Because it's a really difficult question to put together.
Consensus. There's no consensus on with the Israelis as what to do.
Right.
They're throwing up their hands, thinking that they're looking for leadership, but they look for the leadership, and the leadership fails them anyway. So there's no consensus, and it's like something from the outside has got to force them. That might be the solution. Strong arm tactics from outside saying, listen, there's the Geneva Conventions, there's humanitarian rights people have, and they just simply might have to be enforced from outside. Now, America's a long way from doing that at the moment, but things are changing rapidly.
Right. Okay, great. So let's see. Moving from that, let me see if anyone's kind of posted any questions, any questions that are worthwhile asking, because otherwise,
it'd actually be good to see your questions written down, because if you want to type out your questions, that'd be good as well.
Okay. I'm just going to look through the text chat and see if anyone has listed any particular questions. And right now I'm just skimming for question marks, but I'm not seeing any, because otherwise then I would love to move into the next subject, and we could kind of stay focused on the next subject. Does that sound good? Oh, okay. Greta,
yeah, I'm in your hands. I don't actually see any text at all in my window box at all. It's just blank.
Really? What browser are you using? Because that's a bug, and if you could just tell me that quickly.
IE.
Okay.
Internet Explorer.
Do you know what version by any chance?
Oh, it'll be the latest.
The latest. Okay. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry you don't see that, Roger, because I'll
tell you the version.
Okay. There are a lot of people. It's
908. You want to hear the version?
No. That's fine. You said 9, right?
9, yeah, .0.8.112.
Okay.
Blah blah.
So Greta just asked a question before, and it says right here, ask Roger if he regrets his support for Israel for so many years.
I do, absolutely. Absolutely regret it. I'm not Robinson Crusoe there, though.
Okay.
Everyone's a product of the upbringing. Everyone's a propaganda.
Right, exactly. And how about this next?
Not everyone learns to get out of it.
Right. Now, next.
Not everyone learns how to get out of it.
Of course. So next question, as a combination of both Jimmy and Greta, do you accept two-state solution, or do you think it's more of a one-state solution that's required at this point?
Well, eventually, I think it has to be one state. But to get to that one state, if the Palestinians vote on a two-state solution, so be it. I think the solution and the long-term solution is one state.
Okay. And do you and okay, so ultimately one state solution is what's necessary, but you just mentioned that maybe there needs to be a two-state solution that then turns into one state. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Come on.
Did you
Can't hear. Silence.
Did you hear what I said? Do you hear me?
No.
Okay, 1 second.
There was a long silence.
Okay, do you hear me right now? Am I coming in?
I do now.
Okay,
good.
Do now. What I just wanted to quickly ask you was, you mentioned perhaps there needs to be a two-state solution short term that turns into a one-state solution. Is that what I kind of heard you say? Do you want to elaborate
Correct.
on that?
Yes.
How would that exactly?
If that's the way the Palestinians want it.
How exactly?
Well, they have to have a plebiscite on all this, no doubt.
How exactly would that work?
Well, it's not up to us, is it? It's up to them.
Right.
And if they have a plebiscite, they have a vote on that. There have to be majority rules. Democratic vote.
Right.
But there's variations of the two-state. There's a confederation as well. There's variations of it. So it's not cut and dried two-state, one-state state. There's, you can have a binational one state sharing the parliamentary resources and features. There's variations of it, though.
Right. And now, an interesting question that I would pose to you is, like we had a few Israeli soldiers on, they said that, they've trained Palestinian Authority, policemen to, train them properly to secure their own borders and stuff. If Israel just left the two territories today alone, such as, Gaza and West Bank, what do you think would happen? Because right now we're having a discussion about apartheid, but yet it's interesting to think, like, what would occur if they just totally said, they just went out of the picture and just left it alone. What would happen, do you think?
You mean two territories, one being West Bank and one being Gaza?
Yeah, what exactly would... Yeah, exactly. Those two territories. If they just said, we're out of here, and they just...
Well, the trouble is that Israel has put its sticky fingers into the politics of the West Bank and Gaza. This was pretty much a creation of Israel anyway. Israel, before the elections of Hamas, never in its wildest dreams expected Hamas to win the elections. So, because they've polluted the landscape, the political landscape, pulling out willy-nilly will cause a vacuum, a power vacuum, most likely anyway. So yeah, nothing can be done suddenly. It'd have to be well thought out, and you probably have to have the United Nations there keeping the peace. It'll be a big operation. It'd have to be planned. It'd have to have world support. It'd have to have a huge world focus on it. You know, if they were to do something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, like Greta makes.
In my opinion.
Yeah, no, of course. And Greta's making a point in the text chat. I'm really sorry that you can't see the comments that are being written inside of there. But Greta says that the Palestinians are smart, well-educated people, and they can teach themselves. They don't want handouts. They want freedom. Okay. So just because I think that was interesting, an interesting discussion. Do you mind if we move into a second subject? Do you want to continue speaking? I know it's very late over by you. Do you want to continue talking?
I'm all yours, Max.
You're all mine. I'm so honored. Thank you, sir.
Whatever you can steer it whichever way you like.
All right, great. So why don't we move into a second topic that I think is really interesting to cover, and that is,
sure.
Is it ever justified militarily for Palestinians to target Israeli civilians, or Israeli civilians to target Palestinian civilians? And I guess I'll pose that as the first question, and I'll let you kind of run with it.
No.
No on either side.
It's too simple. It's just no on either side. Civilians should not be part of blood counts.
Right. And so
it's impossible, of course, for the Palestinians to target anybody. They don't have the wherewithal to target a civilian or somebody in the military. So,
well,
it's a red herring question. It really.
Do you when you say they don't have the wherewithal to target civilians, I mean, do you?
Well, they can with stones.
Right, but so I mean,
stone's not going to hurt.
I guess though my question to you would be, one of the Israeli soldiers that we had on last week, said that he and his buddies while in the military, tested out some of the different stud rockets that are used by Hamas in terms of target practice and stuff. And he said that those rockets get the publicity that they're just kind of shot off and who knows where they're going to land. But he said that by testing some of the rockets that he did, he was able to get precision up to I think it was 15 meters or so, something like that. I mean, do you honestly believe that there's zero targeting on the Hamas or Palestinian end?
I don't quite understand what you're saying. This Israeli defense guy tested whose rockets? Some Israeli rockets or Palestinian rockets?
Palestinian rockets. And
he said he could get accuracy with it.
Correct.
Well, there are some new Iranian rockets that Palestinians are using, and they do have some capability of targeting. So he may be right, but it's only something very new that the Palestinians have got some rockets that actually have some capability, decent capability.
Right. Now, another question coming from the text chat is, do you think Israel has the right to target the people of Palestine with their weapons of mass destruction?
No.
Now, I guess, though...
No, it's like the old term, shooting fish in a barrel. It's has to be the most evil thing known to man.
Right. Now, do you think that there's any? I mean,
go ahead.
sorry. What I was going to say is, do you think that there's been videos that I've been sent, showing the idea behind having certain missiles and certain ammunition, hidden within civilian playgrounds within West Bank or Gaza. Have you ever seen any of those videos, and do you think they're actually do you think they're accurate assumptions at times that Hamas is actually doing that at certain points?
It's a nonsense. Gaza is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. There's no place for them to place their rockets out in open fields, or there's no military installations. They have to, by necessity, fire them from urban areas, built areas. It's a nonsense that they can't do anything else but fire them from densely populated areas.
No, I definitely hear you when you say that it's densely populated. I've heard that before from individuals, but I mean, just talking, the two of us. Do you really truly believe that there's nowhere past like let's say playgrounds or mosques or hospitals which get shown on these YouTube videos? Let's say, do you really think that there's any other better places that these things could be pushed, or do you think that maybe? And then here's like a kind of a counter question, which I think is interesting. Do you think that there's any sort of media or propaganda play that the Palestinians look to by hiding them in those areas to make Israel look bad? Do you think it's purposefully done, possibly?
Well, firstly, a good area to fire them would be from the sea. But who controls the coast of Gaza? Israelis. It'd be good if they could fire them from airspace. Who controls the airspace over Gaza? Israelis. It'd be good if they could fire them in what open space they have, but the open space they do have would have a very focused view from satellites. Israel doesn't have to look far to find open space, so all that open space would be monitored to the nth degree. So they can't win. I mean, they can't win. I don't think they fire them from mosques myself. Store things, maybe in mosques, but I doubt. Have you seen evidence of them being fired from mosques? I haven't.
I mean, I've definitely seen some videos that people. Obviously, it's a YouTube video, so it's hard to, validate how accurate they are. But I mean, there definitely have been, pieces of information that have come by me where it's like, they're being fired in these sorts of, fired from these civilian areas. So then ultimately, according to the Israeli military, the only place they have to, go and defend themselves is going into those areas, and that's where civilian lives potentially get taken.
Well, they're not a threat anyway, so they don't have to go after them.
Right.
How many have they killed in the last 12 months? 3, 4, 5?
Who is the threat then, Roger? I mean, you bring up a great point. Who is the threat? Who are they going after, and who are they by either purposefully or by accident? They're killing these civilians. Who are they going after, and why are they doing, let's say, in your opinion, I guess, a bad job? Yeah.
The threat is population. Simple as that. The threat is population. If they're allowed to breed, they would outpopulate the Israelis very, very quickly. The Israelis don't seem to have as many children per family on average. The Muslims seem to populate very, very well. They seem to have maybe good biological reproductive elements. But the population demographics, Israel certainly doesn't like a big population on its doorsteps, and they don't like the idea of their population being compromised by non-Jews.
Right. Now, do you think, I'm looking at the...
Many elements of Israel want to take over Gaza as their territory anyway, so it'd be hotly contested, the arguments in Israel itself.
Right. Now, I guess an interesting question I want to throw out at you is, do you think that IDF soldiers, do you honestly believe that maybe they're given, like, you know, inhumane orders to go after civilians? Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. If you heard Normal Finkelstein interview IDF soldiers that did the last, the Gaza one in 2003, was it? 2005 or something. Not the second last one.
Right.
They did the ground invasion. They were just told to shoot anything that moved, Rambo style.
Right. And so, I mean, ultimately, I think an interesting point that I would like to point out, it's just something, you know, that I'm curious to get your opinion on. Back when I was in school, you heard about, like, the U.S. military inside of Iraq and killing, you know, I think the number is somewhere like around hundreds of thousands of civilians, and that number kind of astonished me. Do you know what I'm referring to? Of, you know, the U.S. inside of Iraq?
Yes.
So I wonder, you know...
Americans know.
What's up?
Americans were no better in Iraq.
Right. And so, do you think there's any sort of correlation between the two, or are they on different levels? They can't really be compared? What do you think about that?
Oh, it's probably quite comparable. Quite comparable. They're both very evil. The Americans, was it Nafuja? No, that city, I can't remember. One of the cities, they virtually destroyed much of the living people in the Fallujah. Yeah, I think just went in and destroyed Rambo style as well. So both very evil.
Okay. My next question that I want to bring up, one second. So my important question to you, I think this is a really interesting question to throw out there. Okay, Roger, are you ready for it? Roger, do you hear me? Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Okay. Okay, I have a really interesting question. Do you hear me? Okay.
A really interesting question. I heard you.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So that question is how do you think Israel is supposed to deal with people who are willing to blow themselves up, you know, from a few years back, and then kill Israeli, you know, innocent civilians, you know, in what, you know, a lot of the times, at least it's portrayed as like, you know, they're doing it for their religion. They're going ahead and blowing themselves up, committing suicide to, you know, do it for their religion. How do you think Israel's supposed to deal with that?
Suicide bombers?
Yes.
Well, Palestinians have done the peaceful option for such a long time, gets them nowhere. They are forced to show their anger and disgust in some ways And they have shown their anger and disgust. Still gets them nowhere, though. They're in a no-win situation. If they be peaceable and wait, it gets them nowhere. It's just something they do simply to remind them it's not acceptable. What they're doing is not acceptable. And it doesn't happen much. It never ever did happen much. But it's, just a reminder to Israel, what you're doing is unacceptable.
Right, but do you think that, those sorts of actions really make any kind of sense? I mean, like, there's one thing to be a resistance, but, like, to kill yourself, in order to kill others, do you think that really, do you see any logic in that?
Oh, it's so incredibly sad that they have to resort to it. It's so incredibly sad. They give their lives for the good. When you've nothing to live for, these things happen. The Israelis have controlled them in such a way and demonized them in such a way that they have nothing to live for. The Israelis should be saying to themselves, why don't they have anything to live for? If they want to kill themselves, obviously they don't think much of their lives. The Israelis should be asking a question of themselves. Why are we doing this? Makes them do that.
Right. But now, do you think that? So I that's a great point that you just brought up. I just marked that down. That's a great point. What I guess I was going to ask though is for those, let's say, if there are those Palestinian people that, let's say, aren't taking that approach, but let's say are doing it for, like, you get the sense that there are certain people out there that have different ways of interpreting their religion, and if there are people that are blowing themselves up, for religious purposes, let's say to kill Jews or whatever, do you think that has any? Do you think there's any justification to do that if for those that are doing it for those reasons?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe that gets them anywhere. As a religious reason, I think the secular reason is good enough reason.
Yeah, no, that was a very interesting.
And they shouldn't. They don't need. They don't to look. I don't think they need to look at the religious reason at all.
Right. Would you say?
I mean, some of the religious leaders might couch it as a religious reason to get them to do it. People can be led by the nose all the time. So, I don't believe the religious clerics, the Muslim clerics, should be teaching that line at all. Obviously, some do.
Okay. Great. All right. So, Roger, we're coming up on almost an hour that we've been speaking. And let me just see actually quickly if there's any questions that people have posed in the text chat. 1 second. Okay, Greta, let me just see here. Why are you concentrating on the Palestinian? Why are you asking a question about the religion and murder mayhem from the Jewish Israelis? Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, the next question that really needs to be posed in terms of civilians is, where does there exist at any point in time? What do you think? The Israelis are saying is their justification for going in and murdering, thousands of Palestinian civilians. I mean, is it just, are they, because there's so many good Palestinian people living inside of
justification.
There's zero justification. So it's just them.
What they're trying to do, there's no justification. There's no justification. But what they're trying to do, obviously, is sending a message, don't mess with us. And the message is that find another place in the world to live. Get the hell out of our backyard. That's the message they're sending. There's no justification in that message. There's no justification in their killing. but they're trying to send a message: get out of our backyard. And of course, any state that does that will find sooner or later that they will have no friends in the world, and they'll be isolated, and their regime will be over.
Right.
Just a matter of time.
Okay, great. Let me see if there's any other things that people have posted. 1 second.
Are we staying on topic? Okay.
I think so. I think we're doing better. I think we're definitely staying on topic. Better. And so, I mean, we're coming up on an hour. For how long we've been speaking. So, I guess what I would ask you next would be, maybe we'll take the conversation and make it a little more solutions oriented and forward looking. So I guess the first thing that I would pose to you, and 1 more second, let me see if anyone's posed something else to ask. Okay, I don't see any question marks, so I think we're okay. The first thing I would ask to you is, what do you think are the immediate next steps that need to take place at this moment in time?
Well, I think that there should be a policy every year that so many Israelis that have not been born in Israel, that have immigrated away from America or Europe, I think they should be, a certain amount every year should be sent back. I think they should be sending them to other parts of the world from whence they came from. And then it's going to be far simpler to dismantle the Jewish state when that happens. I think dismantling the Jewish state is an absolute paramount move for there to be peace in Palestine. Sorry, I forgot what the question was now.
Yeah, no, we were just talking about, what are the immediate next steps, to go forward with peace. So you think that
next steps, yeah.
Yeah, so you think that
dismantling the Jewish state, no doubt about it.
So and can you just clarify exactly what you mean for
reducing the population there?
Reducing the population. So when you say dismantling the Jewish state, are you basically just strictly saying, removing the idea that this country has to have like a religious background to it or a religious roots to it? Is that what you're saying? What you mean by that, ultimately?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't need to have a Jewishness in its laws or in its viewpoints. It can be a secular state where there is freedom of religion. Other states do it all around the world. Not a problem.
So my question to you would be, and I have yet to throw this question out there, so I'd be interested to see how other people react to it. Is there other aren't there other countries around the world, and specifically in that region, that have, I guess it would be, Islamic roots, as the core to their country? Is that not true? I mean, when you look at that area specifically, aren't a lot of the countries that surround them have religious upbringings?
That is true, but they haven't occupied another country. They haven't gone in an ethnic cleansing campaign. They haven't had as much involvement from the rest of the world as far as steering their policies and everything. So, and basically, they don't threaten other countries. They keep to themselves. There's a totally different, dynamic happening between Israel and a lot of other Arab states.
So I guess what
the dynamics were different.
Okay, because yeah, I think that's a very interesting point to make. I see Jimmy has a question here that I want to address, but my follow up to that would just quickly be, so then if there are a bunch of other Muslim states and countries with a Islamic, with Islamic roots to the upbringing of those countries, and you're saying that it's okay for those to exist as long as there's no occupations going on. I mean, ultimately, where do you think a state with Jewish roots and upbringings should be founded? Where should that exist, and should it exist?
It doesn't need to exist. Shouldn't exist. I'd like to see the Muslim states become more secular too, but the urgency for them to do that isn't nearly as high as the urgency for Israel to do it. And you do see it. Indonesia's becoming more of a secular state, more so. There are ends around the world where the mullahs aren't controlling the place.
Right, but you don't think as a whole in the world there should be one place where Jewish people could reside in because it has their religious upbringing? You don't think that should exist?
Not as a dedicated country. No, they do well in Australia here. They do well in America. They do well in many countries in the world. The Jews have no problem at all living in Australia.
Right. I guess I'm just
example. For other countries to follow.
I guess and I hear what you're saying. I'm just curious at your answer because with all these other countries around the world that have, I mean, like even you look at America, which is where I'm in right now, and I mean, most people would say that it's a very diverse country, but obviously it has Christian upbringing, Christian roots. I mean, so with all these other countries around the world that have a designated country, and there are a bunch of these, there are a bunch of countries with Muslim roots. I guess I'm just curious.
The extent of their Christian roots, is really the Magna Carta, is really the foundation for democracy. They don't really have Christian roots. They just have a democratic foundation that happened to come from a mostly Christian country, England, back in the 16th century or 18th century. So, it's not a Christian country. It just is democratic. It believes in freedom, religious freedoms, believes in separation of state and judicial.
Right. Okay. And I guess I'm just looking at one particular question. So, do you think if they dismantled the Jewish representation for Israel, and they removed the occupation, do you think it would be okay for Palestine to be a Muslim state? Do you think it would be okay to change to that?
No, it should be a secular state with full religious freedom.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
I wouldn't like it to see it become a Muslim state.
Do you think that there's
plenty of Christian in the area too?
Do you think that
plenty
is
of Zoroastrians? Maybe it's not many Hindus, not many Sikh things, but there's a fair diversity there anyway.
Do you think though it is? Do you think that it's vulnerable to turn into that if they remove the occupation and dismantle the Jewish title?
I don't think if it's a democratic state, I don't think that will happen, and I don't think there's any likelihood of that happening. The Shias and the Sunnis, they couldn't decide between themselves as to how it would run anyway. I think there's no chance of that happening.
Right.
a constitutional framework where that couldn't happen anyway.
Okay, great. Roger, thank you so much for joining me here today on Vonvo. I know it's very late over by you, and we've been speaking for just over an hour now, and I think we've covered a bunch of different things. I think we stayed focused, which is great. So I just wanted to thank you once again. The people inside of text chat are having a interesting discussion right now about the idea behind what we were just talking about. Muslim state or Jewish state, etc. I'm sorry you couldn't see that, by the way.
I may have upset a few too.
You might have, but no, it's all good. Thank you so much. If you want to, go on a short amount of sleep today, in like 7 hours, I think your time, we're going to be having another really great discussion with this guy Miko Peled. If you want to join for that, so and sit in and listen. So if you want to,
isn't Ryan coming up and? Isn't the next one Ryan?
No, that's tomorrow.
Ryan, is it?
I think that's tomorrow.
Oh.
So yeah, definitely, check out Vonvo throughout the weekend. Obviously, use the right, Facebook account you need, and thank you so much for joining me here today. Okay.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hope to see you soon. Okay.
Sorry about the hiccup at the start.
No problem. You did great. You did great.
Later. Thanks.
Thank you so much.